Hello, and welcome to Pod of the Week, a place where I get to share my thoughts on pods I think you need to know about. For the next month, March, and in fact, let's look at April as well, I want to focus our attention on great stories and great podcasts from the African continent, starting with South Africa and working our way up to the rest of the continent. I believe there's just so many amazing podcasts on the African continent which needs to be profiled, and I think I can do my part in doing so. And so for this first Pod of the Week for the month of March, I want to invite you to listen to a heartfelt podcast. Pardon the pun, a selfless act. And that's the act of organ donation. And this podcast is curated by Prime Media Plus with the host Pippa Hudson. And this podcast is called The Gift of Life. Now, this podcast centers around amazing stories of how people have received organs. And this is both from the donor perspective, from the family members of the donor, as well as the recipients of these particular organs, the process they had to go through, the challenges, the heartache, but also the amazing life and love that they experienced post the procedure. But just all of the emotions, all of the procedures, all of the life experience that is surrounding organ donation in South Africa. Yeah. Now, this podcast is dated. The final episode of this podcast is in 2023, but it is still a beautiful series which I believe show you a different side to South Africa and the importance of being an organ donor. So if you want to know what it sounds like, have a listen.
Imagine being told that you won't survive without a new heart, or you won't ever see again without new corneas. Imagine knowing that your entire future depends on somebody else donating those organs, but that the chance of that actually happening is extremely slim. That is the reality for thousands of South Africans who find themselves living suspended lives, waiting for an organ that might never come. Around 4,000 people are on the waiting list at any time, yet less than 1% of South Africans have registered as potential donors. If it was you or your loved one, wouldn't you do anything you could to change those odds? Welcome to A Gift of Life, a podcast series that examines the subject of organ donation in South Africa and asks what we can do to improve the chance of a second chance for those patients. If you've already signed up as an organ donor in South Africa, chances are it might well have been because of my next guest, or rather because of her daughter. Jenna Lowe was only 20 years old when she passed away in June 2015. But before her death, she launched a campaign that became a rallying cry for families and patients all over the country. The Get Me to 21 campaign was responsible for recruiting literally thousands of people to register as organ and tissue donors. I was one of them. There will surely be more because her family has chosen to continue their awareness-raising work as a way of honouring Jenna's legacy. It's my honour to welcome her mother, Gabby Lowe, to the podcast. Gabby, before Jenna's diagnosis with pulmonary hypertension, had your family ever had any kind of conversation about the concept of organ donation?
You know, that's such an interesting question and one that no one has ever asked me.
Oh.
Yes, interesting. But I think we had. I wasn't registered as an organ donor, though. That's very interesting.
Okay.
I wasn't, but we had discussed that we would be happy to donate our organs.
Okay, so there was an awareness there, you'd had the conversation, but of course a very different perspective on that conversation looms when it's your child who is on the waiting list and you're faced with the reality of what the organ shortage looks like.
So if you're looking for a podcast that is centered around good stories, real life South African stories, but also seeing the end result of doing good, then this is the podcast for you. So remember, podcasts are not for some, they're for everyone.